extremely. I want you to think of a time where you went through emotional distress and it was hard and you didn't like it. And that's very, very negative, and I'm sorry, but you'll see. But there's a twist to this, because you also have to incorporate why you loved doing it. And you might be thinking, how is it possible that I could hate a situation so much and yet love it at the same time? Why? And I just wanted to let you know that you're not alone in those feelings. Walt Disney once said, it's kind of fun to do the impossible. And that's what I want you to call your extremely difficult situation that you actually ended up loving, the impossible. Because since you loved it, it was obviously kind of fun. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Nicole Leatherman, and I wanted to start off by thanking you for joining me here tonight to hear about my year in independent study and mentorship. For those of you that don't know, independent study and mentorship is a program offered at all Frisco ISD high schools to juniors and seniors. And to get in the class, you have to fill out an application and then go through an interview process so that you can participate. And what you do in the class is that for the first semester, you go ahead and you learn about professionalism. So you learn how to dress, oh so nicely. You learn about how to speak to professionals, leave voicemails, send thank you notes, which is actually very important, I've learned. And really just how to conduct yourself as a young professional person. And during the first semester to do so, and in preparation for what we do for the second semester, we do these things called research assessments. And we essentially pick a topic within the topic we've chosen to go more in depth in our studies. And like I just said, you get to pick a topic, so each student studies something different. And then in the second semester, our overall goal is to go and find a mentor out in the professional field that we've chosen. This year in ISM, I chose to study technical theater. And I got to do so under the guidance of my mentor, Mr. Benjamin Schur. Mr. Schur is the director of the theater program at Reedy High School, and he is just, as he requested me to say, lovely and brilliant and amazing and wonderful.
You can have this. This is her critique, so there you go, you got it.
She covered it all.
Yes, but other adjectives that I was originally going to describe him with, he's incredibly witty, as you just saw. He's very humorous, he's patient, he's supportive, and he made what could be a very stressful process very fun and easy. Well, not necessarily easy, but fun. So, as I said, I got to study technical theater. And technical theater is all of the non-acting aspects of a live theatrical performance, such as lighting, sound, costumes, hair, makeup, props, set, publicity. There's a whole bunch of things that are incorporated to it. And I got into technical theater my sophomore year when my former director, Mr. Brian Gronkowski, came to me and he said, you need to do tech for our UIL one-act play. And I was just completely horrified because I had never done technical theater before, and the UIL one-act play is essentially the child of the theater department. Everyone loves it, and it's important because it's a competition. So it was very stressful and I was freaking out. But as I went through the process, I really discovered I just love technical theater. I finally found my place where I fit in, where I could learn how to do the things that I love, and I was happy, really, really happy, and I still am, especially under the guidance of my director, Mrs. Melody Copeland. So, to delve in a little bit, in the study and mentorship, under the guidance of the mentor, we are supposed to develop a final product. And what my final product was, being in technical theater, was to put a play on stage. And to do so, Mr. Schur, he had his Theater 2 class perform a children's play called The Magic Flute, dramatized by June Walker Rogers. And it's actually a very simple, funny play about a prince that gets sent on a quest to go rescue his princess with his wacky companion. And it's a very funny play, and I would love to elaborate on it for you just a little bit. So, the play begins. That's the cast photo, by the way, of everyone in their costumes on performance day. It ended up going very well, and I'm very proud of them. But the play begins, and there's a dragon chasing around this prince. His name is Tamino on stage. And he's getting very tired, so he's very laden down with his burdens, and he ends up passing out. And as he passes out, this dragon is getting ready to kill him, and 3 women with spears charge on. Those 3 women in blue, they charge on and they kill the dragon. And they go, ah, yes, yay, we saved him. And then they get summoned away by their queen, who is the woman in blue. And as they get summoned away, a little bird man, the one in orange and red that's on the ground, comes on stage, and he gets freaked out by the dragon because he's actually just a terrified person. He's scared of essentially everything. So as he comes on stage and sees this dragon, the Prince Tamino wakes up and says, "Thank you, you've saved my life by slaying this beast." And Papagino takes it like a man. He's like, "Yeah, I did." Papagino is the bird man, by the way. Until the 3 women come back on, and they say, "No, that's a complete lie, you fool, Papagino." And that's essentially a summary of the character of Papagino, you fool. But regardless, so they come on, and as things are going on, the Queen of the Night comes on stage, and it's learned that an evil tyrant named Sarastro has kidnapped her daughter, Pamina, and she wants Tamino, in return for her women saving his life, go and free his daughter by killing the tyrant Sarastro. And so Tamino goes, "Oh yeah, she's very beautiful, I will go save her, yes, yes." And Papagino ends up being sent along with them. So they go to this foreign land where apparently there's a tyrant named Sarastro, and they end up getting separated pretty quickly. Papagino is the first to find Pamina, that's the girl in white, and as they're talking, they discover that Pamina is not very happy there. She wants to go home to her mother, and there's a servant of Sarastro named Monstados, and he harasses her all the time. So she's really just very unhappy. And as Papagino introduces her to this concept of Tamino, because he's not actually there, she ends up starting to fall in love with him, just like Tamino started falling in love with her. And during all of that, Tamino is actually on his way to go visit Sarastro, that's the man in the middle in green, and he runs into an older man and is saying, "I'm going to go kill Sarastro because he's a tyrant." But he discovers that Sarastro is actually not a tyrant, but a high priest. And so he's obviously a good guy. And as Tamino lives, that Tamino learns that Pamina lives. He's filled with hope, and he runs off to go and find his princess, right as Papagino and Pamina walk on from the opposite direction. And as they encounter Monstados, that's the man in black, they have an encounter, and they end up being brought before Sarastro, the high priest, and it's learned that Monstados, who has been harassing Pamina, is in fact disloyal to his master by harassing her because he's supposed to be guarding her, and he's sent away to be punished. And Sarastro looks at Tamino and Pamina and says, "We're going to test your love to see if it's actually real." So as they go on, Pamina is sent away, and Tamino and Papagino are put into an oath of silence where they're not allowed to speak in the presence of any women. And what happens? Excuse me, my mother is making a very interesting face. So, what happens is that as they're put under this oath of silence, the 3 women of the queen show up, and they're saying, "Stop, stop, you're saying that you're disloyal to the queen by taking this test, and they're going to end up killing you," despite the fact that they now already know that Sarastro is a good guy, not a tyrant. And they end up getting taken away before they succeed in getting the boys to speak. And Tamino goes off to go find some of Sarastro's elders, thinking that this has been a trick, and he wants to make sure that everything is still going as planned. And as he runs off, telling Papagino, the fool, to not break his oath of silence, an old hag is sent in to talk to Papageno, and he's very flirtatious. I say he because the old hag was actually played by an actor instead of an actress. It was a great character. I loved it. So as this old hag comes on and is talking about marriage and all these wonderful things, Papageno essentially is like, you're ugly and you're old and I don't like you. But it's revealed to him that the old hag is actually Papagena, and Papagena is this lovely bird woman, similar to Papageno, that is actually what's promised to him for essentially being silent and proving his loyalty to Sarastro. And as the play goes on and the oath is broken, Papagena is sent away, and Tamino comes back, and they learn that they still have to be tested. So Pamina comes into the testing room, and she leaves pretty quickly when Tamino won't speak to her. She thinks that he doesn't love her, and she doesn't know that he's being tested to be silent in the presence of all women. So she goes away very brokenhearted into the garden, where Monstados finds her once again. And before Monstados can hurt her or anything like that, because he intends to kill her, Sarastro comes in and saves her and brings her back to the temple. And he actually ends up comforting her because he says that she can't go home even though she's somewhat unhappy here because her mother is actually very evil. And as they go back to the temple, Papageno comes on stage and he has a rope. This rope. And as he is very distressed that he broke his oath of silence and lost the thing he secretly wanted most in life, his true love. So he starts tying himself up, and he's getting ready to commit an act of sacrifice that will prove his loyalty to the king, and the three spirits rush on and they say, "Don't be stupid, take off the rope. You can have Papagena because you've clearly proven that you have a strong will to get what you want." And so that's all good and happy, but before they can go back to the temple and announce their happiness to everyone, the queen, her women, and Monstados come on, and they are yelling about how they're going to kill Sarastro and they will succeed and all of these awful things. But before they can do anything, the ground swallows them. Random plot twist, I know. The ground swallows them. It just happens. With a clap of thunder, if you'd like to know. And so as they get swallowed by the ground, Papageno and Papagena come out hiding, and they're like, "Oh, okay, let's go." And that's essentially that scene. And back at the temple, Tamino and Pamina have been reunited, and they are told that they have to get put through another test, a test of fire and a test of water. And because this will prove that their love can truly survive anything. So they get put through the test, and using the help of Tamino's magic flute, that's where the title comes in, they pass the test. And in the end, Papageno and Papagena come back and they announce, and everyone's happy and there's a happy ending. So it's a good play. It was fun. The kids absolutely loved it. I wish I could have gotten a recording of their laughter and their faces because they were so happy. It was colorful and it kept their attention for a whole 35 or 40 minutes. So it was very good. Because if you don't have kids, which I think almost all you do, you can't keep their attention for that long very much. So, and then of course the casting for that, and I was very proud of them because it went so well. So now I'd like to talk to you a little bit about what I did to make this production go on, because that's what I was supposed to do in ISM, help create this show and get it on stage. So it started off by me, of course, reading the script and kind of seeing what the characters were like, what the setting was like, what I wanted to do. And I ended up setting the show, in case you couldn't tell by the set in the pictures, in ancient Egypt. A lot of people said it in Asia, and I chose Egypt because I wanted to. And then the next step I learned was to kind of make a due dates for each of the areas. So on one day, props would be due, and on another day, set would be due, and on another day, costumes would be due, so that we kind of had a guideline of where we needed to be with timing. And after that, we started designing the show itself by finding inspiration. I actually made Pinterest boards for each area that said what I kind of wanted to see within my designs and the culture of ancient Egypt that I could incorporate to really paint this show for the audience. And then after that, we began designing things. And the thing that I learned to design most was costumes. There were 18 costumes in all in the show, and it was very interesting because each of them was made by hand. Each actor in the Theater 2 class got to go buy a $5 or so sheet, and we turned it into a costume, which are actually over here, and I'd love to talk to you about. So one thing I'm really proud of is that a few of these kids are really dedicated to the show. They are actually actors that were on stage and performed. They're in their costumes. And so I would like to start off by bringing up Kyle, who played Monstados. He likes to call himself the bad guy. And Monstados' costume was pretty simple. It was a black sheet. I ended up not making the base, but what I'm proudest of on this costume is that this little piece of gold fabric, I added it on there. It's one of the things that I learned to sew by hand. It's hard to see the seams, but I sewed it by hand. Because what ended up happening was, despite the fact that my mentor had a sewing machine at his school, the ones here at Heritage are broken. So I wanted to keep working on costumes even though I wasn't with my mentor. And so I learned how to sew by hand on a lot of the costumes. So, Monstados. Next, I'd like to bring up Dominic, who played our hero, Tamino. And again, Dominic's was pretty simple. I didn't do the base, but I did add a belt, which was hand-sewn on, and these armbands. And part of what made his costume unique, as all of the costumes, was that they were color-coded, where the good guys had a similar color and bad guys had a similar color. So Tamino was matched with his person, Pamina, and so they had a very similar belt. She also had gold armbands, much like his. So it really helped the audience have an association with the colors of who was good, who was bad, who was in a relationship, and who wasn't. Thank you. And then I'd like to bring up Susie. Susie was one of the 3 spirits that saved Papagino, and she was a great spirit. What was unique about the spirit costumes was that each of them had a little armband. And so hers, they were each supposed to represent an element. So hers, I tried to make it seem like it was air. On the one that is this salmon pink color, it was salmon, and she was supposed to be fire. And on this light blue one, it was water, and so she had her little things. Each spirit got a different one to distinguish the different elements. And that was actually at Miss Fisher's advice. Thank you, Susie. So just a few of the other costumes. This is the one I am absolutely proudest of because I completely made it. Like, no one else got to work on this costume but me. And that's probably because it took a while, but that's okay. I'm really proud of it. And so we started off with the green base, and originally I was drawing the outline, and Miss Fisher was like, that looks kind of wrong. So I said, okay, yeah, I see why, and I added the lines before I cut the fabric, and then I cut it out, and I sewed it on the sewing machine. And when I brought it back the next week, he said, you should probably put it on the actor before you sew anything else to make sure it fits. And so I did, and I went up there, and I was all happy and proud, and then it didn't fit. So I was like, oh. So we made some adjustments. I added some fabric, and we put it on him again, and it fit much better. So then I was like, cool, we can start accessorizing. So I added the belt. It's hand sewn on. And the thing I'm absolutely proudest of, my proudest costume, are these ruffles at the bottom. Because each ruffle for each thing right there is about 5 stitches. And if you can see how many ruffles there are, 5 times all that number, that's how many stitches I sewed in one night. And it was ridiculously stressful, and I was tired the next day. But I was really, really happy because I made this costume, and it looked great. Not to brag or anything, but it did.
Will you put it on for us?
No. Thank you for asking.
I'll do it.
You were to church on Sunday?
And then
church on Sunday.
we're doing Cult of Truth at work. And then another one of my favorite costumes was Papagina. and she was the bird woman that accompanied Papagino. And what I loved about these costumes was that they got to have feathers. So as they moved around, especially Papagino, there were just feathers everywhere. And it was hilarious looking. I mean, it's a bird person. How could it not be funny when you stick a person in feathers and you say that they're half bird, half person? And Papagina actually had 2 costume pieces because, like I said, the actor that played the old hag was clearly an actor, and the actress that played Papagina was clearly an actress. So how we made that work was that the old hag had his own robe, and when he walked off stage, Papagino walked on in her robe and ended up throwing it off to reveal herself as Papagino. And it was very cool. But what I love about this costume is that it was it was just the first costume that had a pair of pants. And so I was making this costume, and I was working on it, and I was sitting on the ground trying to make a pair of pants out of a sheet. And I was looking at it, consulting the measuring sheet, and drawing it out, and then saying it looked wrong, so erasing the chalk that I used to draw it. And I just kept looking at Mr. Shirt, and I said, I don't think this looks right. And he kept coming over to me and being like, all you have to do is this. I said, okay. And I tried doing it. I said, sure, it still just looks wrong. And eventually it got to the point where he just stood across the room and he started laughing. And he's like, ha ha ha, I broke Nicole. And he took such pride in it because he had never seen me so dumbfounded by something so simple. So it was a very interesting process, this pair of pants was. And unfortunately, they ended up ripping because she had such physicality, so I had to add fabric. If you can see the seams right there. This pair of pants, if I remember anything about ISM, it's going to be this pair of pants. And the pride that Mr. Scher took in saying that he broke me.
That's amazing, Nicole.
And there are just, like I said, there were 18 costumes, so I'm not going to cover them all. But those were just a few of my favorites because I have fond memories of them. Moving on, I also worked just a little bit with props, and the most important prop, by far to me, was this bowl of fruit. And if you're looking at Mr. Shirt, yes, he's laughing because this bowl of fruit has a background story. So we started working on props right at the beginning because actors like to have things so that they can know what to do with their hands. We made a prop list, priority props and secondary props. And one of the props was a bowl of fruit. So Mr. Scher said, you know what, I have this giant bowl and you can fill it with all this fake fruit I have. So I went and I made this bowl of fruit and I was so proud of it. I mean, it was better looking earlier, but it's a good looking bowl of fruit. So as we start rehearsing the show on stage, I'm noticing that they're not using the bowl of fruit. They're using a single fruit. And I go, oh, okay. And I thought it was just a directorial choice, like, never mind, I don't want a whole bowl of fruit, I just want one. So I never brought it up. And then the day of the show, after we had performed, I went up to Mr. Scher and I said, so we haven't been using the bowl of fruit. And he goes, oh my gosh, I was sitting there today thinking that we were supposed to have a whole bowl instead of one fruit. And I just kind of looked at him and he looked at me and then we laughed. Because I spent probably 30 minutes trying to make this bowl of fruit look really delectable and delicious, filling it with all good things and making it stacked up high to where it looked like a bowl of fruit, and then we didn't use it. And so if anything, I learned that if you think something is supposed to be there, go ahead and bring it up, because otherwise it's probably not going to get used.
Use a single pomegranate.
That's true. It was a pomegranate that they used. And I did my best to work on as many aspects of the show as possible, but I couldn't really get into too many of them because we had 18 costumes to sew, and that took quite a while, and with all of the problems we encountered on some of them, it took a lot of focus on costumes. So I unfortunately didn't really get to do anything on lights, but what I learned about lights from Mr. Scher this year was how to make a lighting plot. And a lighting plot is essentially where all of your lights are and what they do, and how they all come together to make the stage look like it's supposed to. So you would draw lines of where you want to hang your lights and the electrics that are above your stage, and you end up essentially with something like this. if you'll just give me a second to find it. It's kind of small, but something like that, the bottom page. And you also, of course, have to give your lighting board operator some instructions of how to do it and what contributes to what. So that was something very beneficial I learned from Mr. Scher, and I'm actually already using that information to rehang the lights here at Heritage. On sound, I didn't get to do much either. I did help them burn the CD of the sound cues because they couldn't quite figure it out, so it was kind of funny. Because I just went over there and was like, doo, it's done. And it was fun.
Isn't that nice?
Yes.
So did we do that?
Publicity. I made my own poster after the show. Normally you would make a poster before the show to publicize because that's what publicity is. But I ended up making a poster afterwards because our audience was second graders that feed into Reedy High School and their parents and teachers. So this ended up being my poster. Again, it's kind of small, and I'm sorry. Got my poster. And my fun memory with this from Scher was that when he asked what we were working on today, and I said I would like to make a poster, he goes, okay, so do you know how to use Photoshop? And I just kind of stand there and go, no. And he looks at me for a second, and he starts to smile. And I say, sure, don't judge me. And he goes, I'm not. And I go, yes, you are. And he says, okay, a little bit. Because as supportive and kind as he is, there were just some things I didn't know that he was like, Nicole, how? So it was very fun and interesting. Yes. Set, one thing I learned from Scher was how to make a stage plot and a front elevation. So a stage plot is essentially kind of a bird's eye view of the set. You're looking at it from above. And you plot out where each set piece you want is going to be. And what it does is it shows the width and the dimension, not the height. The width and the dimension, yes. Depth, there we go. Thank you, Mr. Scher. The width and the depth of each set piece, but not the height. And it helps just kind of see where things are and where they're supposed to go and helps give a good overview. While a front elevation is from the audience's perspective. It shows the width and the height, but not the depth. And it's typically in color, hand-drawn. And I ended up making a stage plot for the show, but we didn't end up using it because Mr. Scher had a brilliant idea of how to do our set, and we just rolled with it because it was great. And you can actually see a few of the set pieces around the room. I have some Nile Reed plants that his Tech 2 class made. And if you look on the back wall, we have some Egyptian fans and one of the spears from the women of the night. So I think they did a great job on those. Again, I was using making costumes the entire time. Yes. So I'd really like to finish off by just saying thank you to a few specific people. First and foremost, my mentor, Mr. Scher, because he took me under his wing right away and said, oh my gosh, we can do this, and he was so excited, and he helped guide me through all of it, all of my stupidity and failures, and just looking at me and being like, ha ha ha. So thank you, Mr. Scher, for your patience and support. I really appreciate it. And then next, I would like to thank my parents, Mr. Brad and Lisa Leatherman, because they have been with me pretty much my entire, well, my dad and my mom for a very, 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 very long time. And I know I'm not the easiest child to deal with. I have a lot of teenage angst and lack of communicative abilities and those types of things. So I really appreciate all the advice you've ever given me, even if I haven't always taken it. And he's not in the room right now, but I would like to thank my instructor, Mr. Fertile, because he has taught me so much about being a professional, how to speak publicly, and just being confident in who I am and my abilities to do things. And along those lines as well, my theater directors, Mr. and Miss Copeland, they came into Heritage this year, and it's just been such an experience to have a new director on our stage telling us things and teaching us. and I appreciate all the support they gave because despite some sass, I pretty much was missing their classes for a solid. Last but not least, I'd like to thank all of you for being here tonight and supporting me. I know you have very busy schedules and that it takes a lot of time and effort and energy to get here. So I really appreciate each and every one of you.